Hello, welcome to our presentation. Today's aim is to be explaining our system's elicited requirements by going through the use case diagram, functional and non-functional requirements, and project risk assessments for our proposed Hourglass timesheet web application. To start off the presentation, the slide contains a use case diagram that illustrates the general scope of Hourglass timesheets by identifying key use cases in the web application. Some of the key use cases are logging in for guests, which will turn them into the user of the system, consisting of consultants, consultant line managers, administrators, and finance team members. Users are able to log out of the system once logged in. View existing timesheets is an important use case for all users of the system. Users are able to filter the view of timesheet by client name, project name, task, consultant name for managers, finance members, and admins. A filtered view will be convenient for all users to access timesheets based on their needs. Consultant line managers and finance team members can view a summary of all consultants' timesheets. Another significant use case is log hours by day, where consultants are able to pick date of the week and input details such as hours worked, client, project, task description, and potential expenses. They are, of course, also able to edit their hours for that day or delete the day entry, which requires them to view their existing timesheets that they have previously logged hours for. Consultants can then submit their weekly timesheets once they finish logging in hours for all days of the week worked. An optional use case is preview weekly timesheet submissions for consultants before submission. Another key use case is resolve timesheets, where managers can resolve the timesheets by either approving or disapproving it. The timesheet will contain the name of employees that links to their details page, so managers will be able to view their contact details as they please. Managers are also able to export individual consultant timesheets or export a summary of all consultant timesheets for the payroll period. In order to export timesheets, managers must, of course, view the existing timesheets. Consultant and managers can edit their update and reminder email settings as they please. Moving on to the bottom half of the use case diagram, administrators can search for accounts in order to add accounts, which involves adding account details. They can edit account details such as usernames, passwords, account type, employee number, and terminate or remove accounts. All users will be able to view employee details by clicking an employee name on certain interfaces or searching employee first in order to view their details. All users can edit their own details, and managers can remove or add employees, which requires viewing their details first. An optional function of our system is to integrate it with payroll generation, which is automatically done by the system using data from approved timesheets. Use cases involved are for finance team members to edit the payroll sheet in case of any mistakes and validate the payroll sheet so it can be processed for pay distribution. It should be noted that although certain actors are connected to describe use cases, they're limited in certain functionalities according to their role. For example, non-admins can only edit their contact details, whereas admins can have full control over all of the user's details. The summary of the key uses explained can be found on this slide. These use cases help to set the context of the system, plan its implementation, and potentially expose what belongs outside of the scope. As mentioned in the use case diagram, 4 key actors in Hourglass timesheets are the consultant, consultant line manager, administrator, and finance member, who were originally guests of the system prior to logging in. From our last domain analysis, we have decided to remove the HR analyst as this user of the system, as they are not prime users and their stake in the system is very minimal, meaning that they can only use the timesheets to potentially assess the productivity of employees, which is not the direct purpose of the timesheet application. There are further changes to the functionalities of the system from our last domain analysis. We decided to add functionalities including export timesheets, as we assumed that payroll integration would be implemented in our system for finance members to view. However, since payroll integration is not a priority and might not be implemented in the system, exporting timesheet is a must so finance members will get a hold of the timesheets to process them. Additionally, we included a search, logout, and disapprove timesheet functionality, as they are quite necessary use cases to enable efficient use of the system and for the system to better satisfy its intended purposes. Other changes include removing the manager timesheet, which essentially required managers to set the agreed hours for consultants to complete their tasks, so it can be compared with the consultants' timesheets and enable pre-logged hours and automatic approvals. However, following feedback, we found out that managers can also be a client, which may be difficult for them to organize FDM's task activities, and it would overall make their job more difficult by increasing the workload. We removed the manager's ability to log and edit hours on the consultant's timesheets, as they might do so without the consultant's permission, which can create disputes.
Each of our functional requirements aim to fulfill some requirements aimed at the specific user. Some of the key functionalities are aimed at specific users for them to operate the system as intended. In the case of all users, they interact with the system to fulfill some basic requirements, such as the system must allow all users to log in. The system must allow all users to add or edit their own details. The system must allow users to search for other users, and the system must allow users to view employee details. These functionalities are some of the core functionalities that exist in most web applications, and some are extensions to other functionalities. For example, the search functionalities are used to manage timesheets and to manage users. The majority of the functionalities are aimed at consultants to fulfill a set of tasks. The following functionalities are aimed at consultants and are the main requirements of the system. These functionalities help us to establish some further requisites, such as what specific data is to be stored in the system. Next are some of the requirements aimed at consultant line managers, the administrators, and the financial members. These requirements not only exist to function some purpose, such as the consultant line managers being able to set deadlines and approve or disapprove timesheet submissions, but the functionalities also exist to validate the existence of previous functionalities, such as the search functionalities mentioned in the previous slides. Some of the functionalities must exist to allow specific users to accomplish requirements that reinforce their existence in the system. Therefore, consultant line managers must have functionalities that allow them to supervise the consultants. Administrators must be able to manage the system altogether, and the financial members must be able to confirm and process payrolls.
Data requirements for our system users. Our system users refer to the people who use the system to perform their jobs. They are our use case actors. Our system must make sure that all the data requirements for the system users are fulfilled and must be able to keep track of specific details. Some examples of data requirements for our system users. Weekly timesheets must contain a start and end date of the week. It should include the timesheet status like in progress, in review, approved or disapproved, etc. The system should also have the ID of the users.
Hourglass has a couple of non-functional requirements, such as the ones in relation to usability and availability. These requirements ensure our system is well-performing and is of the highest quality in aesthetic and design in regards to its UI. Some of our usability requirements for Hourglass will include an intuitive and easy-to-use UI, low latency and good performance, no need for prerequisite software to be installed, and simultaneous user compatibility. An availability requirement we also have is the need for the system to be up 24/7 with minimal downtime for maintenance. So, how do these requirements represent key aspects of the proposed system? Well, the usability requirements represent the front-end experience of the user with our UI, which needs to be intuitive and smooth, whilst for the availability requirements, these represent the consistency of our system's uptime to accommodate for odd working hours by the users of the system. Both of these requirement sets are tangible and measurable, as we can utilize prototyping of the system during development, beta testing at each stage, and data gathering techniques such as questionnaires and surveys to measure which requirements we have met. In particular for availability, we can also utilize measuring the hourly downtime of the system over a week. These tests should allow for the active evaluation and implementation of the previous requirements. Hourglass also has a couple of platform-related and security-related non-functional requirements. These are here to ensure our system has a high-quality cross-platform integration and security structure. Some of our platform-related non-functional requirements include support for all notable web browsers, such as Chrome, Edge, Safari, Firefox, and Opera. Also, compatibility with Android, iOS, and Windows systems is key. And finally, Hourglass must be a responsive application, which adapts its UI to the size of the device screen that it's running on. We also have a security non-functional requirement, which prohibits any user activities without the appropriate authentication completed. So again, how do these requirements represent key aspects of the proposed system? Well, the platform requirements represent the multi-platform capabilities of the system, which will enhance the ease of use of the system for the users, whilst the security requirements represent the prevention of unauthorized access to the system, which could cause incorrect data entries which may lead to incorrect wages being paid. Both of these requirement sets are tangible and measurable, as we can utilize in-house testing of the system on every required OS and browser to measure the performance and compatibility of Hourglass in each scenario. We can also attempt to hack and break our system externally to test our security capabilities, and also as prevention techniques against unauthorized access. With these tests, we can then measure which requirements we have met and how to achieve the ones that are still left.
My team and I carried out a risk assessment to identify potential risks to the project and in turn their likelihood, severity and impact, as well as preventative/mitigating actions that we can take to either avoid them entirely or reduce their impact and severity. One of the potential risks we identified was having an ill-defined scope. This is relevant to our project as we are currently in the stage of defining the scope through the requirements elicitation. This is a medium probability of occurring, however, the severity of the impact would be quite high, as if the hourglass timesheet system were developed with a poorly defined scope, the end product would be unsuitable for the client's intended purpose. Another potential risk was that scope creep inflates the scope to an unattainable amount. This is relevant to our project, as through the development of the hourglass timesheet system, there could be unwanted inflation of the scope. This is a medium probability of occurring, and the severity of the impact would also be medium, as it will most likely only lead to the unwanted growth to the project scope through incremental alterations, which can be reverted if noticed soon enough. An additional potential risk was users having inaccurate expectations of the hourglass timesheet system will do. This is relevant to our project, as users might have a preconceived idea on how the software will respond to their requirements, which may not be the same to how it actually will. This is a low probability of occurring, however the severity would be high, as the impact would lead to users feeling dissatisfied with the software as they feel it does not suit their needs. Now I will discuss the preventative/mitigating actions that we can take against the previously identified risk. For an ill-defined scope, we must firmly define the project scope at the start and continuously assess the requirements and adjust them if necessary to ensure the scope is correctly defined. For scope creep, we must once again strongly define the project scope at the start and periodically remove the redundant elements of the scope. And finally, for users having inaccurate expectations, we must ensure that we communicate well with the user so they understand how their requirements will be met. In summary, we have highlighted the key use cases being logging hours by day, submitting weekly timesheets, resolving timesheets and validating payroll, and the key actors being consultant, consultant line manager, administrator, financial member, and guest. We have also classified the key functional and non-functional requirements, as well as how they will interact with those actors. We have also discussed the potential risks to the project, along with their likelihood, severity, and impact, as well as preventative/mitigating actions for those risks.